Welcome to Sister Friends. I'm Angie Gray here with my amazing friend,
ReShonda Young.
and together we're diving into what's at the heart of it all, relationships.
From finances and family to the ups and downs of life partnerships, and even those relationships we have with ourselves, we're here to talk about the real stuff.
We're not shying away from the hard conversations, we're leaning into them because we believe that when we start talking, we start understanding.
And when we understand, we grow in empathy, compassion, and connection.
So grab a seat,
Grab a friend, and let's
get into it. Good afternoon, Miss Morgan.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that you're here. This is Sister Friends, and I'm Angie Gray, and we're having Morgan Adams on our show today. Super excited. ReShonda's not going to be with us. I messaged Morgan this morning and said, hey, I forgot to mention that ReShonda won't be able to join us. So this is my first solo one for Sister Friends. And I said, she's got to go testify at a congressional hearing, so I don't think we can get her out of that one. So she's not joining us, sadly. So she says hi, and she's sorry she can't be here, but thank you, thank you, thank you. So I want to start out with just telling people how we met, and then I want you to tell everybody about your amazingness outside of what I'm already going to say.
Sure.
Okay, so Morgan and I just met on LinkedIn. I'm not even sure if we were introduced to, were we introduced to each other? But we met on LinkedIn.
I can't remember. I don't think so. I think I just found you and I thought what you were doing is super cool and that sparked a conversation and here we are now.
Yes, yes, I think that you're right. So, Morgan, I guess, high performance nursing, and Morgan is a sleep specialist. She's a sleep expert, and yeah, we talk about a lot of the same things: wellness, taking care of ourselves, and all those really important things. And so we connected on Zoom, and I feel like we had a lot in common. And we share a lot of the same vision and mission for what we have to do here to serve. So I'm so excited. Sleep, we're going to talk about this because I mentioned that I also wanted some personal things to ask you about. So as a sleep coach, you're going to be so much good for me and so many people. So that being said, besides me sharing your amazingness, tell us a little bit about, how you got started in this, but tell us a little bit about what a sleep coach is.
Yeah. Well, sleep coaching is a relatively new category that, it's increasing, it's up and coming, but it's still like something that a lot of people haven't heard of. So when I get asked at parties or networking events, like, what is a sleep coach? The easiest answer to give is I'm like a personal trainer for your sleep.
Yeah.
But it goes a lot deeper. And so different sleep coaches have different credentials and different interests. And really, I kind of started my journey as a sleep coach by becoming a certified health coach with IIN, Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Yes.
And as I went through that program, what I realized was that it was a generalist kind of program. It didn't really delve into one specific topic deeply. And I missed that. I wanted, I went in knowing I was going to be a sleep coach. And when I didn't get the real deep sleep science piece from that program, I sought out other programs to help bolster that sleep science knowledge. And I've taken several certifications and gone to so many workshops on sleep and just continually improving my skill set and my knowledge about the whole field of sleep. And it's been really amazing to be able to, over the past 4 years, help people, especially, leaders, professionals who have very demanding lives, improve their sleep, and most of all, overcome insomnia. Because my background as a sleeper did actually center around having insomnia for 8 years and being dependent on Ambien for that period of time of 8 years. So it's a very personal mission for me. I think you'll often find people who are health coaches have a sort of a pain to purpose
Mhm.
story, and that really does ring true for me. I was dealing with the sleep issues for so long, was able to heal from that, and then, now helping other people do what I basically am what the person I wished I had during that insomnia struggle. Where
Yeah.
was I, 15 years ago when I
Yeah.
needed me?
I think you're right, Morgan. That is what you find. I think probably a lot of people, but certainly coaches, my story is the same. I wish I had had a me when I was there, and didn't have to go through the suffering. So we're stepping in, we're called to go, I can fill that gap. I went through this and now it's going to mean something. And here it is. First of all, INN program is a hard program. It's an
Mhm.
excellent program. I know several coaches that have gone through that program. It's an excellent program and it's not easy. It's tough. And I love then that because it isn't specific, you get to choose then, what you want to do. And I love that you went on and sought out the science. I'm a science girl, I say that all the time, but I love science and how cool that, I guess, how long ago was that you did that? Because like, I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like maybe about 5 years ago, everybody started talking. I remember specifically when, oh, what is her name? Oh, she's a big CEO. You know who she?
Ariana Huffington.
Yes, Ariane.
Yeah.
I remember when that
Yeah.
article came out. I was like, what? Napping? But I knew intuitively, oh, that would be good, but I don't think I could do it. Anyway, you were really on the cusp of, the future, like where we're headed.
Yeah, I kind of feel that that's true. Unknowingly, I wasn't planning this as like, I want to be on the edge. It just was
Yeah.
such a deep interest of mine. But you're right, Ariana Huffington, I want to say it was 2017-ish, that she kind of came out and talked about her own battle with sleep deprivation and how it really affected her life. I think she had like an accident because she was sleep deprived, and it just really took her on this trajectory of being a sleep evangelist. And then Matt Walker, who wrote Why We Sleep, I think that was 2017-ish. So then he around the same time started really sounding the alarm on the importance of sleep. And so that's, I think, was the time that people started to pay more attention to it.
Mhm.
And as I've been doing this for now 4 years, I've seen more and more traction, more and more podcasts and books and everything about sleep. It's just really becoming a booming topic. And I'm so glad because it's such a foundational part. You've got the pillars of health,
Yeah.
which are sleep, movement, and nutrition.
Yeah.
And there's been such emphasis on the nutrition and movement part for so long, and sleep was sort of left out of the conversation. But now the tides are somewhat turning, and people are starting to realize that sleep is really the foundation upon which these other pillars are built. If you are not sleeping well and getting enough quality sleep on a regular basis, you're not going to be able to do your workout. You're not going to have the motivation and the stamina to get through that class, that spin class or that weightlifting class. You're not going to have the ability to choose higher quality, nutritious foods. You're going to want to become satiated with high carb, high energy foods because your hormones have been imbalanced.
That's right.
So it's like all of these things start to crumble, the food and the movement, if the sleep is not fully dialed in.
Yes. Thank you for
So,
saying that. And I was guilty of that for so many years. My first part of my career is in nursing. I was acted as, and my work was in prevention education, and I taught nutrition. Nutrition was like, I look at it like a wheelbarrow, you need those three wheels. But I tell you, my focus was absolutely on the nutrition piece. Yes, because it seemed like the mindset was like everybody knows you need to sleep. Everybody knows you need to move your body, but people just don't give two shits about nutrition. Why are they not, so that was kind of my thing. Like but the sleep thing I know now, which you've known for the last 4 years or more. I mean, yeah, the hormone effect, the cortisol, just the brain fog, all the things. I mean, you got to have all three pieces if you want to live optimally. And people blow it off. I mean, we just did a podcast, one of our sister friend podcasts not too long ago. Um, where ReShonda, who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she really attributed to because she was doing the other things. And not to say that you can't do all the things that are right. And unfortunately, many people get cancer still. However, she really thinks and knows intuitively that it was not listening to her body and caring for the stress that she was going through. She was eating, I mean, super on point, her nutrition and her moving her body, but she just never slept. She would stay up
Mm,
late and she would try to get the next thing done. And she was like getting very little sleep. And what the sleep she was getting was not quality. So, more and more we're talking about it together and amongst my peers. We talk about it all the time. So I have questions. I mean, I have so many things, even just about what you said, but um, when you were experiencing sleep deprivation or insomnia, like, can you talk about some of those symptoms and what is, because maybe people think, oh, I just don't sleep well. I mean, menopause that I want to get to today, but if we don't, maybe we can get to it another time. It's like its own beast, I feel like, and it
sure.
deserves its
Yeah.
own 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some ways that people should start paying attention to, hey, I have a problem. Let's talk about that first.
Yeah.
You knew.
Yeah. So I think the word insomnia gets thrown around a lot. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand what it is on a clinical level. So, like, let's just kind of um, go over the clinical definition, if you will. So, it's having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early, at least 3 nights a week. And there also needs to be, in addition to that, some kind of detriment on your daytime performance or dissatisfaction with your sleep. For it to be chronic, it would be 3 months or more. And then fewer than 3 months would be called acute insomnia. So, as you can see, there's a little bit of subjectiveness to that definition because there are people out there who are, having trouble falling asleep. They're waking up and they don't have a care in the world about it. And so they wouldn't really fall into the definition of insomnia because they either don't have dissatisfaction from their sleep or they don't have any performance or performance issues the next day. So with me and my insomnia, I had what they call sleep onset insomnia, and that's when you're having trouble falling asleep.
Mhm.
So I would lie in bed at night an hour or two, staring at the clock, which we can talk about. I just did a LinkedIn post about this today, the clock and
Okay.
how it affects insomnia. But I was, after about 2 months or so of this, really frustrated because I didn't know what to do about it. And it was really creating problems for me just psychologically.
Mhm.
And I went to my primary care doctor and I was given Ambien as a solution.
How long
And
ago was this, Morgan? Sorry to interrupt
this,
you.
no, this was about 20 years ago, close to 20 years ago. And at that time in my life, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. So, my currency was medications and samples. I mean, you probably, as a nurse, you probably, were in this kind of world as well in some respect, but being offered a sleeping pill for my problems falling asleep didn't seem odd to me. It was just like, oh, okay, well, there's a medicine for that. I'll take it, sure. And, the pill actually did help me fall asleep more quickly, which they do for the most part, but I had such debilitating side effects the next day. And that showed up as brain fog, um, trouble concentrating, just not feeling fully alert until close to lunchtime. And at this point in my life, I had transitioned out of pharmaceutical sales. I was in PR at a public health agency. And so in that role, I had to come up with copy very quickly, like when things were happening that were, quote, emergencies. I had to write really quickly. And I remember there were several occasions where my boss was like looking over my shoulder as I was trying to write, and I just couldn't produce because my brain was like so foggy from the residual sleeping pill that hadn't worn off. And it's real interesting because in 2013, the FDA made the manufacturers of Ambien change their dosing for women because they figured out that women were basically being overdosed, probably double but given double the dose. And so I was still at that point taking the medicine. And essentially I was getting overdosed unbeknownst to me.
Wow.
So now I'm like, in retrospect, no wonder I felt completely foggy. And with sleeping pills, they do have typically a statistically significant improvement in onset of sleep, like I experienced, but from a functional perspective, they're not really helping your daytime performance. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They're getting to sleep 20 minutes faster, but at what cost the next day,
Yes.
right?
That's fascinating. Not surprising. The women part, dosage, not surprising. And is that better now? They've adjusted.
They have adjusted that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my mom was having a lot of, so I'm so curious also what stage of life you were in because my mom, when she was taking Ambien, she also had terrible, terrible kind of fallout, if you will. And now she doesn't take that, but it was freely given without really any education on what it could feel like, and but at
Oh,
that point,
yeah.
people are so desperate, right, that they can't
Yeah.
sleep. This is so, the menopausal crossover is just, I mean, for women and the research that is the lack of research that hasn't been there. I'm sure you're a plethora of information about that. At what age were you then when, if I can ask, when all
Sure.
this sort of happened, and do you relate it now, what you know about menopause and what you know about sleep? Do you believe that it was related, or were you experiencing other things in life? That's kind of where I want to go, kind of both places, whatever you
Yeah.
tackle.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was only 35. And, not to get too much into my own like menopausal history, but I'm a late bloomer. I'm 55 and I'm just in menopause. So I had a very delayed perimenopause up until I don't think I was really perimenopausal until maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah, me too,
So
56.
we're late bloomers. That's what I call myself
But that's a
anyway.
good thing for those of you that are watching. That's a
Yeah,
good thing. The longer you
it's
can go,
not
the
a
better.
yeah, it's not a bad thing at all. So what was going on with me at the time at 35 is I was in a new relationship that was very stressful to me, and that triggered the insomnia. And so what we often find with people who have insomnia is there's typically a triggering event that kicks off the insomnia. Um, and that was that for me. So it wasn't at all related to hormones. It was purely stress and anxiety. And honestly, I won't go into the details of the relationship, but I will just say I was living out of alignment with my values.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had that to contend with. And I do believe firmly when you are not in alignment with your values, that does show up at night for many people
Yes,
in terms of just the quality, the ability to fall asleep and to stay asleep and to be happy with your sleep.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And we are in alignment in the way we teach about that. And as a coach, I'm sure you bring that up. That's something that we
Yeah.
talk about in your coaching. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to say one more time, define for me, because I want to break that down a little bit. Define for me what is the definition of insomnia? Now, because there's people that have a hard time falling asleep, definitely that don't have insomnia. But then I want to get to the outcomes of good sleep versus not good sleep. Tell me that again, we said the when you're having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up too early.
Yes.
And basically that just continuing on for 3 months,
Yeah. And the defining criteria has to be 3 nights or more during the
3 nights
week.
or more. Okay.
So
Okay.
to say that like, okay, this is where it gets a little murky. If you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep once a week, you really wouldn't be considered clinically to
Mhm.
have insomnia. And I feel like a lot of people, will say I've got insomnia when they actually are just humans who have periodic trouble sleeping. Because I always want to clarify that we're not chasing perfect sleep. If you can be satisfied with your sleep, especially at our age, 5 nights out of seven, you're doing pretty well. So
Good
we,
to know.
even,
Good to know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just setting up realistic expectations. I mean, even doing all the things I'm doing for my sleep and knowing all the things I know about circadian rhythm optimization, I still will get a bad night here and there. And there's really no rhyme or reason for it. I haven't really done anything in particular to throw myself off, but it just happens. And I think there's a degree of acceptance that we need to find around that. And that's a lot of what I help my clients with is the mindset around sleep and accepting that not every night is going to be a perfect night.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, so thank you for that definition. So there are people that are taking drugs to fall asleep because it's the worst thing in the absolute world and all the universes to not be able to fall asleep. And I love that you brought up the stress of your relationship because so many people are experiencing stress. I deal with this as a coach as well. Um, I think that people are using different kinds of drugs, right? They're using over-the-counter drugs, they're using illegal drugs, they're using pharmaceutical drugs. Um, Let me ask you before I go into what are some ways that we can fall asleep that are natural. What are your thoughts about melatonin? My thoughts, my education is I know that so melatonin is the I want you to explain as much as you can. I just know that as
Yeah.
we age, we produce less of it, and that can be challenging. I know that it can at some point not be great. I just went and had a Dutch test. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, I've had a few.
Women, if you want to know what that is, it's the best hormonal test you could take. Highly recommend it. But my melatonin, because I take a high quality bioavailable melatonin, and but I've taken it for so long. It was like my numbers were like in the 400s. It was like
Wow.
400 times higher than, but it's not harmful. But anyway,
Yeah.
what your thoughts were about melatonin, you can educate
Yeah.
a little bit about that. And children in melatonin. I know a lot of parents that use melatonin for their kids, and as far as I understand, that's not a great thing to do.
Yeah. Melatonin is quite literally, I think, the most controversial topic in sleep. It's just very polarizing, kind of like I don't know, in the nutrition world, keto might
Yeah,
be like
sure,
people have
sure.
strong opinions.
Yeah,
But so this is kind of where I land out with melatonin is that it is something that really should be looked at pretty closely as far as taking a supplement when you're in midlife. There's actually a graph that I was shown in a training recently where you see a very steep drop off in melatonin production around midlife. I mean, it starts in early adulthood, quite frankly. So you just see it just really start to tank around 50. So for the midlife clients that I work with, if they want to take melatonin, now not all of them want to take it, but if they are asking about it, I typically, I don't advise supplements. I try to stay in my lane, but like I don't have any issues at all taking a very small dose of melatonin if you're in midlife and beyond to supplement what you've lost.
right, right.
Now, I think we need to be careful about the sourcing of the melatonin because there is quite a difference in quality among brands. And they did a study several years ago in Canada where they pulled random melatonin bottles off the shelves.
Yeah, I
And
remember that.
yeah, do you remember? And so basically what happened was they were able to discover that a lot of the melatonin brands didn't have what was advertised in the bottle. So, for example, you think you're buying a 5 milligram melatonin and you're getting a 10 milligram melatonin, which isn't harmful per se, but sometimes people do have side effects just to higher doses of melatonin.
Mhm.
Sometimes people have weird dreams. And then
Heart
there's
palpitations, it can have over a certain dose, and everybody's different, but you can have heart palpitations, experiencing things that feel like anxiety, but that can have the reverse effect where you're having
yeah.
time falling asleep.
And melatonin it has so many uses outside of sleep. When I had breast cancer, I was prescribed a higher dose of melatonin.
Mm.
I think it was 10 milligrams. But again, that was only short term. That was for a very therapeutic purpose. I wouldn't, advise a client to take 10 milligrams of melatonin. Some of them have come to me on that much, and we eventually, reduce it. And the sweet spot seems to be like zero point 0.3 to 1 milligram tends to be a pretty reliable dose to just give you a little bit of bump because you lost some of that exogenous melatonin production.
In my experience, I was before I knew what was going on with my body and started shifting some things with menopause. Again, that will be another podcast episode. But I've been taking melatonin probably since I was about 40, just like 1 milligram, and it helped me stay asleep. So I would wake up and then not able to get back to sleep because of children. I think so just conditioning. I was such a light sleeper, then I would have a hard time falling back to sleep. So the melatonin helped me stay asleep. And because it was high quality, like you mentioned, it not over the counter, it helped me stay asleep and I didn't have the groggy feelings afterwards. Now, I have to tell you, working with my functional medicine doctor now and seeing that my levels were so high, ridiculously high, she was not worried about anything because it wasn't affecting me. And I think that's what you're saying. Hey, if it's working for you, then wonderful. But it's good to continue to have studies. But I do know that there was a point where I was taking too much because I'm going to be really vulnerable right now. It's a little bit sweet. It tastes a little bit sweet to me. So it was like, oh, I knew they weren't hurting me. So I was taking like five. They're just
Hmm.
little guys that you put under your tongue. I was taking
Yeah.
like a little
Yeah.
tic tac almost. And I did get to then when I then returned to my functional medicine doctor and said, this is my symptoms, she was like, yeah, you need to, that could totally be it. And
Hmm.
then Morgan, I have been sleeping just excellently, and I was out of my melatonin that I use. And didn't have it for like a whole week. So I wasn't taking it. I was just drinking my sleepy tea. So that's a tool that I use is my sleepy time tea. Love that. Um, and I've been sleeping great, but then I just got some more in the mail, and I took it last night, and I took three. Don't ask me why. I took three, and it was tasty. It was a tasty treat. But I do have to say that this morning, which is really weird, I think my body is really just metabolically, because of how I'm eating and doing my body, metabolically pretty balanced now, and I just don't need that. And I woke up pretty groggy today. So,
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
melatonin, I think I'm hearing you say, not a bad thing if it's working for you, but just be mindful that to stay at at a dose that is safe, like what the bottle says. If you don't, it's not like it's unsafe, but you might experience side effects.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, what I would recommend for everyone to do before they go to a supplement is make sure they're doing everything they can in their daily life to preserve their natural melatonin.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
basically, there's just a couple key things, and that is getting a lot of natural daylight because that actually improves our melatonin production. And then really avoiding artificial light at night because it's those bright lights, those blue lights at night that suppress our melatonin.
Say that again.
So,
Thank you, thank you, thank you. As a prevention
yeah,
educator, definitely say that one more time. Two things
yeah,
you can do before you need to go start taking any melatonin
yeah.
is,
Get plenty of natural light during the day, especially in the morning,
okay,
because
in the morning.
that morning light cues your circadian rhythm up to give you good melatonin and cortisol pulse during the day and night. And then, sometime, a few hours before bed, when it's starting to get dark, is when we want to be mindful of our environment. So we want to turn off the overhead lights above us and use a table lamp or candles. We want to take away, maybe not take away our phones, but use them more mindfully and maybe dim them. There's a red light little trick that I have on my phone, turns it red
Oh, do
with
I have
so
that?
you
Is that
triple
an
click
iPhone?
it.
That's an
Yeah,
iPhone. Where's that little lever
yeah.
at? Show us. How do you do that?
So you know what? The directions are kind of long, but
Okay.
if you want to
You can chat GPT it.
yeah, definitely do that. It'll tell you in it's 1 second. But essentially what you do is you set it up to do red filter in your settings, and then you do a shortcut. So I just triple clicked the right hand button to make it go red, and I triple clicked it back to make it go back to its natural normal, hue. Um, so just being mindful of like how much blue light we're getting at night and artificial light is basically the gist of making sure that we're not suppressing our melatonin production.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. And an easy way to do that is to, if, getting the daylight. I know everybody wears sunscreen and you should continue to wear sunscreen. But that morning, if you could go out if you have a choice to take a morning walk, that's kind of settles it. You can
Yes.
morning walk and you're getting that morning sun. It's not the strong sun that's going to burn you. So you can be out for 30 minutes without sunscreen.
Yeah,
Um,
and sunglasses. I'll
yeah.
interject
Yeah.
too. Yeah, because I really I'm kind of like almost militant about this. I joke with my husband that if we had a neighborhood newsletter, I would probably take out a PSA ad just to tell people not to wear their sunglasses on their morning walks because so many people do. And the reason why it's not a great idea is because it's shielding your eyes from absorbing the natural light. And so basically what's happening is your eye, the light from the, natural light hits your retina. It sends a signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your circadian pacemaker.
Wow.
And then from there, there's this really awesome cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters happening to help you, boost the melatonin and serotonin to boost cortisol. Now, when I say boost melatonin, here's what's interesting. It's shutting down residual melatonin from the night before, and it's actually queuing your melatonin up for the following night.
Wow.
So and it's helping your thyroid hormone. It's helping regulate your appetite. So like any type of natural light in the morning without sunglasses for about 10 minutes, I call it like your inner pharmacy. It's like every time I talk about this and people haven't heard it and they start doing it, they'll message me and they're like, yeah, that is really a cool tip because it's just not really ingrained in us to do that. We're so used to just getting up, getting our coffee and getting to work. Like there's no like, let's take a walk or let's sit outside and have our coffee. So it's such a great habit to develop. And it does help you really strengthen your circadian rhythm and it helps you sleep better. So it's like it's amazing because it's a free tip and
Yes.
it's simple. And what's kind of funny is that sometimes when people want me to give them sleep tips, they're expecting like really fancy biohacks and I have those at my disposal to share with anyone. I use them myself and I think they're awesome. But sometimes the simplest free things are often head scratchers because they're like, well, if it's so good, why haven't I heard about this by now? Well, here's why. There's no money to be made off
Yeah, I
of
was
it.
just going to say that there's no money in that. Your
There's
body
no money.
exactly what to do with the natural things and nature, and that's so so true. Oh my gosh, Morgan, that is so amazing. And it's a practice. It's a ritual, a morning ritual that you can create just like meditation or get up and brushing your teeth and all that stuff. Gosh, that's a very exciting one. I'm gonna need to re-listen to this a couple times. Okay, so mention to me or touch on quickly about children. What about children and melatonin or children and how to help them sleep? Because I just know a lot of people that will turn to melatonin to help their children sleep. So I want you to tell us about that. And then how do I get, what would you have on board to tell us about how to help children get to sleep?
Well, I should preface this by saying I don't work with children
Right.
and I don't have children.
Okay.
So I'm probably not the person for this question, but here's what I will share. Melatonin isn't generally recommended for children because like I was mentioning before, if you look at the graph, kids, like young kids up to, teenagers and young little kids, they have tons of melatonin. They've got melatonin to spare.
Yep.
So they don't actually need that melatonin. And I think that also, from a psychological standpoint, if you're giving your child melatonin, you're almost setting the child up to be primed to take some kind of pill or something to help them sleep. Now it's a little bit different for, people when they're shifting time zones or they're using it real strategically for a certain period of time. That's a whole different story. And there is, I think, some validity in using melatonin for specific disorders in childhood, and they are escaping me right now. Like I mentioned, I'm not a pediatric person. But what I think that we could do, I mean, basically, so many of the things that apply to adults apply to children.
Yeah.
So if you do have a child and you're concerned about his or her sleep, the same things apply. Get the morning sunlight. Try to encourage your child to go outside during the day and play like we did when we were young.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Like we wanted to go outside. I mean, we
Yes.
we kind of intuitively knew that was a good place to be. And then, again, like when we were growing up, we didn't have the screens like they do. So I think setting some boundaries around the screens, again, using the filters on their phones. I mean, like I don't have kids, so I don't understand. I mean, I understand from having a couple of nephews, they get very attached to their devices and fights can ensue if you try to take away their devices. So I don't want to go down that route because I don't know how to, really how to manage that. But, it's the same things that apply. Really, in your household, you can help your whole family by just dimming the lights. I mean, there is a point where, some family members may balk because it can get too dark. You want to be safe. You don't want to have it pitch black so everyone's tripping and falling and, creating a ruckus. So there's this balance you want to
No
follow.
ruckuses, no ruckus. So I mean, but what you're saying is so true. I mean, it's back to the three things with children, and we can end that. I might be considered an expert with seven, but not really. So nutrition, moving your body, and sleep, and to help them sleep, there are those things that you just mentioned, making sure that they move their body. How are they eating? That all of these affect all of these, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, thanks for touching on that. I want to go to for the last few minutes that we have, and I can keep talking to you forever, Morgan. If it's okay with you, I'm going to invite you back. Um,
sure.
thank you. This topic so much because this is actually what's happening in my life, and I'm experiencing really, really good sleep for the first time in a bit. Where I shared with you, I was waking up. First of all, I would have a hard time falling asleep. That's my issue now. And I wouldn't say hard, much better than it used to be. But I probably lay there less time than I think I do, but it's maybe 20 minutes. That's probably not even bad anymore.
Oh,
My husband, though, here's what I'm laying next to, it's like, I mean,
yeah. Yes,
before he
same
gets,
here.
right? Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a little bit depressing, but anyway, I'm experiencing really, really good sleep now. So it's really wonderful. But I wanted to ask you about relationships on the topic of husband. Can you share with us your own experience, maybe, and then how science wise, and just understanding this whole realm? How does, really good sleep, restful sleep affect relationships?
Yeah, it affects them profoundly. So when people aren't getting enough sleep, there's some things that happen. So you have less empathy. And if you have less empathy in a relationship, you're gonna see that play out. You're also, if you're sleep deprived, any kind of neutral facial expression can often get misinterpreted as negative. So you could be sleep. I'm just going to use this as an example. Like if I was sleep deprived and I asked my husband a question and he answered it with a neutral face, I might, because I'm sleep deprived, interpret his facial expression as maybe hostile or more negative than it actually is.
Wow.
So that's a real big deal. Um, People just tend to have more conflict in relationships when somebody is not sleeping well. And it can be very, very devastating to relationships. I mean, I've heard many, many stories about how it's, caused them to maybe go to counseling. So I mean, it is just so critical to be aware. Like if you've had a bad night of sleep, you communicate that to your partner and kind of let them know, like, hey, just FYI, I didn't sleep well. So let's walk carefully this morning, together and let's be really communicative. And I just want you to know that.
Morgan, you just took that to the next level because how often I'm just thinking about my husband. This is new information to me. I mean, it makes sense when I think about it as a prevention educator. I know that lack of sleep affects your gut health, and your cortisone levels, your hormone levels, which then affect your mood and your brain fog and how you think. But like to specifically dial in on that one little nugget right there is so cool because what do we say in the morning? How'd you sleep last night? And I oftentimes, if I'm not sleeping well, I don't want to say that. Like, I don't want to be a negative Nelly, I
Yes.
secret or whatever. But now there's like purpose and empathy and what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's nurturing. It's good. It's important. It's healthy to say, "How did you sleep last night?" And then for us to be able to then say, "You know what? I didn't have a great night's sleep last night." And then have the understanding that, oh, that could show up like this. You know,
Right,
take it personal
right.
for me to be self-aware also like that. I'm wondering, I gave my husband maybe so much grief for so long. Those years I wasn't sleeping well, thinking it's him, not having a happy face on. Like, right?
Yeah.
Actually such a big deal. And for our kids as parents, when we're thinking how sleep affects our children and how they show up, trying to regulate their own emotions all the time and figure that out.
Hmm.
It's super,
Yeah.
super fascinating. You have a hard stop. What's one more question if I have time? Do I have time?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
What are your thoughts on Fitbits?
Ah, yes. Well, I'm wearing a Whoop. I'm wearing an
Okay.
Aura ring.
Yes, I'm getting one of those. Yes, through my we're
And
up nursing. And I work with so this podcast isn't specific for my nursing podcast, but I'm going to double do it. So I'm going to introduce them to it. But nurses and their sleep specific are so important. But yes, how do you feel about this? Is it
I have mixed,
accurate? What do you know?
yeah, well, I have mixed feelings, and it kind of depends on who you are. So we'll talk about accuracy. Generally speaking, they're pretty accurate with a lot of different measures,
Okay.
except the sleep staging. They're less
Oh,
accurate. They're less accurate.
oh,
They're getting better. They're getting better, but like I would say they're seven. Aura is probably the gold standard for accuracy with sleep.
okay.
I think that with their latest algorithm change, I think it was what, 2 years ago, maybe, I think they got up to like 70% accuracy with staging. But
The
again,
aura.
it's not, yeah,
Okay.
the aura. But again, it's not perfect. Now, I feel like sleep trackers are a great idea for people who want to optimize their sleep and are able to take the data that they see from their app and apply it to their life. So, for example, if someone notices that, like, gosh, my recovery is really bad, my deep sleep is really bad after I've had 2 drinks.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Well, what will you do with that information? You
Yes.
know, are you going to decrease your amount of drinks to
Yes.
maybe one and see like what happens? Like that's the kind of usefulness I think it's great for. Now, within my client population, I don't use the trackers as much because most of my clients have insomnia and they tend to have a lot of anxiety about their sleep and all the minutia that comes with their sleep. There's a term called orthosomnia. You've probably heard of orthorexia. It's like that fixation on food. It's the same thing with orthosomnia, but with sleep. So they're very concerned about, perfect sleep hygiene, perfect sleep metrics. And I find that a lot of people with insomnia do worse with their sleep when they have a sleep tracker because they hone in on those details and they look at their data every morning with this sort of like, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if their data doesn't look good, they're going to have behaviors during the day that almost lead to like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think the real take home with sleep trackers is that what matters most as far as like the data is how you feel about your sleep. Like ask yourself subjectively, how do I feel that I slept? And one approach that I often recommend for people who are sort of getting a little bit fixated with the data is something I call it the in-between approach. And basically what that looks like is wearing your device every night to track, but putting it on airplane mode and then not looking at the data every morning, but instead waiting for like Saturday or Sunday to review your data from the week so that you can get an idea of the trends that are happening. Because it's good to see the trends in your sleep over time. I mean, I've been tracking for 5 years and I really do like seeing what's improved, what needs more work. But this sort of once a week view of your data lets you step back and become less emotionally attached to the data. You're
Yes.
looking at it much more objectively when you're looking at it once a week than every morning.
Yeah, I
So
would say
that's,
it's a little bit like weighing yourself,
yeah, it's very
there's
similar.
certain times where you maybe need to do that, but Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. I thank you. This Fitbit told me I was a bear sleeper, and that's like I think the best. But I was very excited, and I was looking at it every day, and I don't look at it every day now. I do. Gosh, can I ask one more question?
Yeah, yeah,
Gosh. Okay.
sure.
So when you're looking at your trackers, I think a lot of people use these. I love the advice of doing it once a week so that you don't become fixated and it doesn't become a problem to fall asleep because you're worried about getting better sleep or whatever it might
Right.
be, right? I love that angle. So when you're looking at that data, however, what's the most important piece of the data? Is there a most important piece that you want to be kind of striving or hoping for, and thus creating practices to support that?
Yeah, I would say the probably the most impactful data you could look at would be sleep efficiency.
Oh,
And that is basically the amount of sleep that you're getting when you're in bed. So a good sleep efficiency score would be like 85%. And what that means is out of all the time that you spend in bed, 85% of that time was spent asleep. So that's a good benchmark because if your sleep efficiency falls under 85%, what that means is you're having a lot of awakenings or you're having a hard time falling asleep or you're waking up too early.
okay, so that's really interesting. I really appreciate that because, like, yeah, so they tell me my scores with the Fitbit are great or fair or whatever. I'm always wanting in the 80s. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
90s. I've never gotten the 90s. And so I was always
yeah,
interested in the REM, the deep sleep, and the awake parts. It's interesting that you're awake when you don't know you're awake. It's so interesting.
yeah.
I will tell you that how much the things that you've been sharing are accurate to my own life. Of course, they're accurate, but real life practical that back to that melatonin. I had been sleeping in the 80s and not taking any melatonin. And then I decided for whatever reason, I'm treating myself with this sweet tasting melatonin last night and took three. I not only woke up groggy, but my sleep score was a 71. There was
Mm.
awake time in there.
Oh, interesting.
I just think it's really, really fascinating. And it did take me a minute to wake up. So I'm gonna adjust accordingly. And I'm not gonna take any melatonin tonight because maybe I just don't need that anymore because my
Yeah,
parts of my lifestyle
yeah.
are attuned.
It's a great observation. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I call being very sleep self-aware. You're looking at some cues your body's giving you and you're just making adjustments and testing and seeing what happens. I think that's awesome.
I lied. I have another question. And then I swear
Yeah.
on our new
Yeah.
and I close it out. Oh my God, I knew I was gonna love this interview. You're so smart. What about reading? I have heard, okay, so this is part of my practice to fall asleep, no phone, but I read. And my son, who's a cardiac surgeon guy that thinks he knows it all, told me not too long ago. I don't mean that, TJ, if you're listening, you're amazing. Love, but it was like really coming me out. He goes, Mom, you shouldn't be even reading. Just go to bed. I don't know about that. Is it true?
No, that's not true. Yeah,
Okay.
reading is, I mean, I've seen some small studies showing that reading can help us get to sleep more quickly. And I think out of all of the behaviors that we can like the activities we can do before bed, I think reading is like probably at the top of the list.
Oh, good.
Because I mean, even if you're reading on a Kindle that's got like very good a very good light situation, like you can make it in dark mode. There's just something very relaxing about reading, but there is a caveat. Now, I've had a couple of clients have it's backfired on them, and it's only because of the content of the things they were
Yeah,
reading.
I wondered about that.
So I think you have to kind of pick your content smartly and figure out what's going to kind of relax you and not stimulate you and make you want to keep going to the next chapter or finish the book.
Well, that's kind of myself, and I think probably so many people I will nod off, but then I'll wake up and go again. And I think that thank you for this because that is my affirmation that, oh, Angie, the first time you fall asleep, time to put the book away. Don't wake up
Yes.
and then go at it again.
Right. Yeah. You
Yes.
got one shot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, lessons. Um, Morgan Adams. sleep coach, extraordinaire. You're
Oh, thank
amazing.
you.
How can people find you?
Yeah. You can go to my website, Morgan Adams Wellness. I've got a couple of things to offer. I've got a free consultation opportunity for anyone who is kind of questioning their sleep and wondering if they could benefit from working from with a sleep coach. There's a free consultation opportunity. And there's also a really cool guide for people who are having a lot of middle of the night wake ups. It's called Awake Again at 3 a.m., Your Guide to Why You're Waking Up and What to Do About It. You can just download that from my website for free. And it's a great resource if you're struggling with that issue. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm on Instagram a lot. Like those are my main social platforms.
Okay, we'll
DM
link
me,
those.
say
We'll link
hi.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
link, you can link those and you can say hi to me. I love it when people introduce themselves to me, like after hearing me talk on, a summit or a podcast interview. It's affirmation that what I'm doing matters. So like, please say hi and like, we'll engage.
So
It'll be
good to
great.
invite people to do that because it is so meaningful to get feedback. Coaches, for whoever's listening, it is a little bit lonely sometimes, right? Because you're working with those clients and you're
Yeah.
putting out all this information because you care. And I know you do. You've spoken and shared so vulnerably your story and how you got to be where you're at. And you put a lot of time and effort and education into serving people. And man, you have helped me so much today, who's this prevention educator. I've learned and I love learning. So thank you so much, Morgan. You're awesome and you're
You're
beautiful.
welcome. Thank
And
you so
you
much.
look so well rested.
Oh, yeah, I did get a good night's sleep last night,
That's
thankfully.
fabulous. I have so many people that
Thank you.
I know are going to be really excited to listen to this, and I have referrals coming your way. So
Thank
thank
you,
you, thank you,
Angie.
thank you. Have a great night's sleep tonight.
You too.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Angie Gray. This is Morgan Adams, and we are here with Sister Friends Missing ReShonda. Thank you all.
Thanks for tuning in to Sister Friends. We hope these conversations help you see things from a new angle, feel a little more connected, and maybe even laugh along the way.
Remember, whether it's family, work, or those elephants in the room we all deal with, everything really is about relationships.
If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Share your thoughts, share this podcast with a friend, and let's keep building those connections.
Until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and let's keep growing
Together.
together.